The third research concept actually moves away from neuroimaging, although we do have some supportive evidence there, and moves into experimental psychology. And the first research finding that I want to share with you is that the first stage defense to death reminders, like estate planning, is avoidance. So let's talk about avoidance. Look, if we want to talk to people about charitable estate planning, regardless of the terminology or packaging, estate planning is still planning for one's own death. It's a strong reminder of the reality of our own mortality. Now, believe it or not, there is actually an entire field of experimental research in psychology that is devoted to answering the question of how does it change people's values and preferences when you remind them that they're going to die. The field is called terror management theory. Yes, that is a real thing. No, I did not make this up. But because of that, we actually have hundreds of experimental research results that show us what the consistent reactions are to mortality reminders, such as estate planning or charitable estate planning. For most people, most of the time, the first response to these kinds of reminders is some form of avoidance. So avoidance might be something like distraction. I'm just too busy to think about that now. Or differentiation. That doesn't really apply to me. Or denial. Those worries are overstated. Or delay. I definitely plan to think about this later. Or depart. I'm going to stay away from that reminder. Let me give you an example of this that I think might be useful. And the question is this: what is the most common response to an organ donation request? It's a gift. It's a charitable gift. It doesn't cost you anything, but it's a pretty strong death reminder. Is the most common response yes, no, or I don't want to think about it? So if we look at these 4 European countries where the effective consent rates for organ donation are between 4% and about 27%, we would say, well, no, most people don't want to donate their organs. But if we look at these other European countries where the effective consent rates are 98, 99% or higher, you would say, well, clearly, yes, people do want to donate their organs. Now, before you try to figure out the cultural differences between Austria on the right and Germany on the left, I'll give you the secret. The countries on the left, you check the box to opt in to organ donation. Countries on the right, you check the box to opt out of organ donation. So what can we take from this research? We can say conclusively, people do not want to opt in to organ donation. People do not want to opt out of organ donation. How do we explain that? It's because they don't want to think about it. Right? And so they don't want to engage with that process, and the desire to not engage with that process leads to these results. By the way, does I don't want to think about it have any impact for what we're talking about? It most certainly does. Looking at US data, about 5.7% of folks age 52 and above have included charity in their estate plans. Another 38% either weren't asked or they said no, but most people, they're still in the I don't want to think about it category because they don't want to think about it, so they just don't have any documents. Now, because I don't want to think about it, the default or social norm becomes very powerful. We'll also explain a little bit later another reason why it becomes more powerful. But if I don't want to think about something, if you tell me what most people do, what the default option is, that's going to be very powerful. And actually, we see the power of this in some results from the UK. So this was a study where 3,000 people were going through their normal estate planning process. Unbeknownst to them, they were put into one of 3 groups. One group got the standard estate planning questions with no specific reference to charity. 5% of those folks included charity in their wills. The next group got one extra question: would you like to leave any money to charity in your will? And that simple question by itself more than doubled the share of people including gifts to charity in their will documents. However, if you instead ask that question with a social norm statement, Many of our customers like to leave money to charity in their will. Now we more than triple the share of people who are actually including charity in their will documents. And not only are we tripling the share of people who are doing it, the average gift size also doubles. So it's a six-fold effect from a single sentence. By the way, you may notice there's also there's a second part to that phrase, but I've tested both parts separately. The second part doesn't make any impact. It's the social norm, the first sentence, that makes the impact. Just to make sure that this replicates here in North America, we ran this study with a US audience and found similar results, that if we add a social norm statement, people's interest in making the gift goes up. Many people like to leave a gift to charity in their will. By the way, you do need to include that they like to do it, not just that they do it. That makes it more powerful. Okay, so that's the research concept, that the first stage defense to death reminders, such as estate planning, is avoidance. What do we do with that? Well, I want to suggest this. If you want to reach a larger audience, don't lead with death. We need to come up with the spoonful of sugar that makes the medicine go down. We need to come up with a way to communicate obliquely. So let me give you a little bit of what my experience was when I first started out in planned giving. I worked for a religiously affiliated college, and I did what my predecessor had done, which is to give seminars on estate planning in churches that supported our college. And so I started out doing that, and I put together a fantastic seminar on estate planning, and both of the people who showed up for it agreed that it was a great seminar. But I had to learn, if I wanted to reach a larger audience, that maybe I needed to start with a bit broader topic that didn't focus so much on death. So this is the idea of communicating obliquely. If we recognize that personal mortality topics are, for most people, most of the time subconsciously aversive, we may want to wrap them in other topics in order to sidestep that initial avoidance response. So, for example, instead of charitable estate planning, maybe we do a presentation on tax smart giving, where we talk about some current giving strategies, but also include in that some planned giving strategies. By the way, I mentioned that I was giving seminars and supporting churches. I changed my topic to Christians in the law, since I was a lawyer, and talked about some religious liberties issues, and then ended with stewardship estate planning issues. And by the way, my sign-up rate for the initial meeting to talk about their estate planning actually stayed just as high for that topic, but with that topic, I got a much more massively larger audience. I talked, by the way, with another now retired planned giving officer for the Archdiocese of New Orleans. He had the same experience giving estate planning seminars, so he changed his topic to senior concerns. You talk about some health-related issues, some financial issues, and then talk about the estate planning issue. By the way, whenever we talk about asking for a gift in a will, oftentimes fundraisers get really uncomfortable with how to do that. Now, I've got a whole hour-long presentation about how to ask for the gift in a will, but let me give you the simplest technique to train fundraisers to ask about a gift in a will. I like to call it the 4S method. It is for share 3 stories and then shut up. Well, I'm here at Texas Tech University. Suppose I was a fundraiser, not a professor at Texas Tech, and let's say you were an alumnus. How might this sound? Well, at some point in the conversation, what's going to come up is, so what's new at Texas Tech? And I might say something like this. Well, we just hired a new football coach, and he's supposed to be a good recruiter, really hoping that things go well with the program there. A lot of new construction on campus. You know, we're over 40,000 students now, if you can believe that. If you come in the west side, you'll see where a lot of those new residence halls and other buildings are. Oh, and Mary Smith did a neat thing. Now, did you know Mary? She graduated 2 years before you. No. Well, Mary spent her whole career helping other people get their finances in order. And she recently signed a new will that one day will create a permanent scholarship for our financial planning students. That's the 4th step. Now, if you have reached someone at a point in their lives when they are interested in continuing this conversation, you've given them an opportunity to do that. They can pick it up. You can continue to talk about different giving opportunities, strategies, all of that. If you've reached somebody at a point in their lives when they're not interested in continuing the conversation, you might hear something like, oh, that new building, now where would I park if I wanted to see it? And you might think, oh, I tried it and it didn't work because we didn't sign the will today. But remember, what was the most powerful strategy or message that we tested for shifting attitudes about including a gift in a will? It was to share a living donor story, and even more powerfully, to share a living donor story about a gift in a will that reflected that person's life story, that created some permanent impact. And it's a story about someone like the donor. I mean, in this case, I said she graduated 2 years before you. If that wasn't the case, I'd point out some other way that they're similar. Or if I can't think of anything, I'll just say, you remind me of another donor, Mary Smith. Here's what she did recently, that sort of thing. So very powerful. And notice we don't lead with death, right? We're just sharing stories, and along the way, mention the death-related story. Another way we can do this is through the donor survey. I worked with one organization that wanted to go after gifts and wills. And so they were used to sending out appeal letters. So they sent out an appeal letter that went after gifts and wills, but let me just say it very strongly led with death. They had the standard response card, with the, I've already included your organization in my will, or please contact me about my upcoming death. Well, that's not actually what it says, but we both know that's what that means. And they sent out 35,000 of these appeal letters, and they got back nothing. Now, if you don't do sophisticated academic statistical research, let me translate that for you. That's not a very good response rate, okay? But here's the important part. That same organization later sent out a brief one-page survey. Started out with questions about how'd you get connected to our organization or cause? Here's different projects we're working on, which are the most important to you. And then towards the end, ask the same question. What's the likelihood you might include us with a gift if you happen to sign a new will, that you might include our organization with that gift? Rate that likelihood. Would you like more information about this? Or is this something you've already done? Here's the important part. That same organization got back a 22% response rate from the brief survey. It was the same question, the same information. Are you thinking about including us in a gift and a will, or have you already done it? But if you lead with death, you get avoidance. If we're doing something else and just along the way, then mention the death-related topic, then you get a much higher level of interest. In fact, not only did they get a 22% response rate, a year later, they mailed again to their non-responders, got another 18% response rate. Or I love this story. This is from the Journal of Gift Planning, where a charity puts on a planned giving seminar. People don't show up, so they hire a consultant. I said, consultant. People aren't showing up to our planned giving seminars. How come? And the consultant says, I don't know. Let's have a focus group. So they got a bunch of donors around and they said, hey, folks, we need your help. We want to put on planned giving seminars, and people aren't showing up. We're not sure why. We want to talk to them about things like charitable gift annuity and what they can do. Right? Hand goes up. A what? Oh, a gift annuity. That's where you make a gift to the organization. You get back lifetime income. We also want to talk to them about how they could set up permanent endowments or scholarships with the gifts that they make in their will. And we didn't know if if that might be of interest. And hand goes up in the room. How do you do that? Well, how does that work? Well, so here was the fun thing. The organization got planned gifts the next day from people who had been in the focus group. And I love the conclusion of the article, which was like scientists who discover a cure unexpectedly, we inadvertently found our answer where we least expected it. The best venue to teach people about planned giving was not a workshop or a seminar on planned giving, but a focus group on why nobody will come to workshops or seminars on planned giving. It's the idea that we're not leading with death. We're doing something else. And along the way, we are covering the death-related topics. You can think about this in terms of how is death insurance sold. Now, of course, we don't call it death insurance. We call it life insurance, even though it's death insurance. It's like fire insurance or flood insurance. But beyond that, death insurance that's actually sold by a human is almost never sold by itself. It's almost always combined with other financial investment products, what we might call universal life or whole life, so that I can begin the conversation not with, so you're going to die, let's talk about that, but instead talk about planning for retirement, planning for your kids' college education. And along the way, I might mention, hey, so if something happened to you, did you still want your kids to go to college? Oh, well, let's put in some protection for that.